So we're going deeper into the Cleveland Browns backfield than you ever wanted to go, or at least that's where we were. That was the pre-pod conversation. But you got the Vikings, the Eagles, and the Panthers. Um, Look, we're post-draft. We have done the power ranks afterwards. Like this point, this is the dead zone of the off season. So we're just gonna shoot the shit and see where the conversation leads us, and see where conversation leads us. And if you guys have ideas, post it in the chat, and we're just gonna have a good conversation, and we'll see what happens with that. And I'll tell you what, anytime I can talk to RJ and James, it's a good conversation.
I agree. We get some good football combos in.
Yes, we do.
All right. Well, kind of jumping back into it. So, interesting idea we were talking about before this, and I think we can kind of can this so it's not the full 30-minute conversation we just had. But Jerome Ford, where does he fall in the pecking order next year? I think everyone agrees he's currently that number 2, could get pushed, but probably not necessarily at deep threat from guys behind him. I think a little bit of variation on that from you guys. Is that about right?
Yeah, I mean, it stemmed from the from us kind of discussing running back values and the type of players that are going for certain prices. But yeah, that's a good summation of what we've been talking about.
No, and that's a good point, because it's the running back value in the NFL is completely different, and the roles are completely different now from what they were before. I think James Good mentioned, like, some of these guys a couple years ago would be satellite backs or non-factors in fantasy, and now it's things we build around. Did we lose James?
Oh no, that was RJ's point.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Did we lose RJ?
No, I'm here. Yeah. I mean, yeah, we used to, what was it, change of pace backs and players that didn't necessarily get 200 plus touches a year. They used to be like lower value to almost like no value. Now they're very much players that we have to pay substantial value for, just because there aren't a lot of the bell cow running backs anymore.
Well, I think part of that, like, I think kind of the move towards PPR. Like, I don't know, did any of your home leagues or original leagues, or think of the leagues you've been in the longest, are they PPR? Did they start that way, or did they kind of end up that way?
I've always been PPR, so.
I haven't. It's always been non-PPR, and it's definitely changed in the past few years.
Yeah, we definitely transitioned towards PPR. My longest running league, we've been at this for almost 20 years now, but it started as no PPR, and then we're at half PPR right now, but kind of growing from there. But it's changing the rules with the roles has been an interesting thing here too. Like, have you guys adjusted premiums in any of your home leagues, either with Superflex or tight end premiums or things like that?
No. I mean, I've definitely played in leagues like that, and you've definitely seen a rise in it. I think people just got tired of, like, the rest of their players would be a coin flip whether they have 10 points or not, and it was just 20-point running backs every week.
Yeah, so I actually have. Last couple of years, we've gone in a lot of my leagues to where we had a 1.25 per tight end catch. and we've actually bumped that up to 1.5 to try to get the top tight ends to be more equivalent to the top receivers.
Yeah, I think that's kind of something we're looking at in one of my longer running leagues is what needs to be done to equalize things there. There are other tweaks in that I've discussed in chat, which can make that kind of unique. But I feel like the tight end adjustment is the big positional thing. I mean, outside of our change from true position, which is kind of a big deal. But I don't know. I think everyone's kind of been all over the board with it this offseason.
This off season's been wild as far as like values of positions.
Well, especially in here because we have the change to true position, and a lot of people woke up one day and they had a lot more defensive ends, and then some people all of a sudden had extra D tackles, and then some people had, just more linebackers than everybody else. So there's been a lot of shuffling and trading for everyone to try to fill out the rooms.
Oh, and we're not done yet. That's the fun part.
No, it's never finished. But again, it's interesting to see how it almost, to James's point, like it's on a given day, like, okay, I'm fine. And then you wake up the next day and it's like, oh, I probably really need another linebacker or really need another edge for this. It's like, wait, like what happened? Like what changed in your understanding of the rules or understanding the depth of the position or what to make you feel you were either, good today and, not tomorrow, or sort of what drove your either misunderstanding or now your understanding of this?
Yeah, or you get unlucky like the Steelers and hey, I'm going to upgrade at edge, and I'm really happy that I upgraded at edge just to find out like 3 hours later, oh, one of my 4 linebackers is now gone for the season. Now I only have 3 left. So what do I do now?
Yep.
And this is the really painful part of the process. Like everyone asks, what's your favorite part of Dynasty, or what's your favorite part of your fantasy process? And a lot of guys in Dynasty will say, oh yeah, it's the draft, or it's the scouting, or it's it's the playoff push and stuff like that. Nobody says it's those 3 months between the draft and the start of really training camp, where every week it's going to be they reach into the hat, they move their hand around, they pull out a name, and sorry, but that's that poor son of a bitch who's out for the season. And
yeah, you had Nyheim Hines. He got hit by a jet ski.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's the in a jet ski crash or a
you just traded for
whatever.
Yeah. You have I want to spend more time with my kids. I'm retiring before training camp. You have the Aaron Donald. Yeah, I can make $38 million if I play one more year, but I don't want $38 million more. I just want to sit on the beach.
Yeah, you have a lot of like you said, you have veterans coming back and just day 2, day 3 of training camp. They're like, you know what, this just isn't for me. I want to go home. I'm not coming back. And for us, that means we're out, one defensive end or one defensive tackle that was going to put up points for the season.
Yeah, and we've got interesting ones already. We got Cam Hayward holding out, who wants more money to just come back. And it seems like, he's a guy at the end of his career. It's, if they don't ante up and give him more money, he might just retire. Like it's, you would always assume something is going to happen there to where he gets his money, but you never know.
I mean, and this is one of those things that I thought about over the last couple of years. Like, did you guys ever play, like, obviously I'm sure you guys did, like, franchise mode for Madden, but did you guys ever do, like, NFL head coach or anything like that?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
But, so, imagine if they tried to simulate what actually happens in the NFL offseason in some of these games. Like, hey, in offseason, you might have a guy who decides he wants to stop playing football because he wants to move to the mountains of Indiana instead, or hey, your tight end starts dating the largest, the biggest grossing pop star on the planet, or any other storylines that actually happen in the NFL. Like, imagine if you tried to simulate that in actual fiction for Madden or head coach or any of this stuff. Like, how would you actually work that in? Because it never comes through clean.
Nope. No,
Well, yeah. Look at the linebacker for the 49ers, played like 2-3 years, and just like, you know what? I don't want to risk my health anymore. I just retire. Guy playing at a near all-pro level, and just, I'm done. And like, Andrew Luck with his dragging a crappy franchise and the organization not being great around him after, a couple years just comes up. Everyone's watching a preseason game, and that's your franchise quarterback. Yeah, I'm done. I'm not playing anymore. I'm retiring.
Like, think about that. Like, they were in a situation that not many teams have a chance. Like, they were going to get like 30 to 35 consecutive years of not just good but elite quarterback play. Like, who else could say that? Like, okay, you look at Green Bay and from Favre to Rodgers, sure, but like, who else?
Rodgers will love.
I don't know. There's been a lot of organizations that have been lucky to not have to take massive dips from like one to another, but there's usually a year or two. But yeah.
Did Cincinnati have to fall off at any point, or did Burrow just replace Dalton? I mean, they haven't been the most winning team, but they've had some pretty quality quarterback play since the early 2000s.
Yeah, it's been a very long time for them as well.
I expect them to do nothing else this offseason, but they are the number one team that if I woke up and saw that there was a Twitter alert that somebody got traded off of a team, it's probably going to be the Bengals.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're notorious for not wanting to pay people, and T's still holding out, and Trey is practicing and he's doing everything, but you've got to be upset when you've been as productive as he has, and they aren't willing to add any more guaranteed money to your contract.
Yeah, and again, like, this obviously wouldn't happen, but like waking up and seeing like, oh yeah, Jamar Chase has been traded to the Giants for Neighbors and a future first, or a future or something like that, and it's like, oh, what the fuck? And yeah, of course that involves the Bengals. Like, it's going to be something big like that, or something small like, okay, Chuck Sizzle is now on the Panthers or something like that. And I feel like they're going to be the team that, does the next shoe to drop in kind of the offensive world here.
Yeah, I mean, they're a cash poor team that hasn't had enough success to really financially turn them around. So they're always going to be struggling with paying upfront money to resign their players.
Yeah, and we also have the, Adam Thielen last year, and some of the end of season press conferences said, hey, I don't know how many more years I have. If things aren't looking good in preseason and camp, there's a chance that Carolina might ship Thielen out early, or he's at least on my list of most likely to get traded on the trade deadline offensive players in the league.
And I mean, that's what you hope for with some of these guys. Like, some of these guys who had the experience and you want them on their team, but like, they don't have long in the league, so get them in the right spots. So you hope for that.
Yeah, Rice is done for the year, or a good chunk of the year. You've got the young guy in there in Worthy. You don't have a lot of older veteran leadership in the receiving room anymore. Why wouldn't they ship a
year? Is he really?
It definitely sounds. I believe I saw something that came out from Shefty or Rappaport that It's already pretty much expected, or the Chiefs were operating under the expectation that Rice would be suspended 6+ games. So who knows whether or not that happens.
The photographer is dropped all charges after today. So
Oh, he's just he's just a PR disaster. It's kind of understandable that he.
All right, this is very much turning into the Aiden O'Connell situation. Will somebody please go trade for Rashee Rice from the fucking Colts so I can get him again? Because he's the exact kind of player I want to buy right now.
Yeah, but the Colts is another supposedly tanking team.
He's not tanking. He has Pierre Strong. He is a usable running back.
He just bought T. Higgins for his 26 first, even though I literally told him not to do it. But,
I'm not necessarily a fan of that. It's good value for T, but...
Is it, though? Is it?
I mean, like I said, it's the concept I hadn't considered before. It's you're locking in a certain value for that first. So regardless of what happens, whether you are a top team or a bottom team, your valuation that you got out of that first round pick is T. Higgins. And think about that. So if I keep the pick and I draft somebody, are they going to be better than T. Higgins? And I'd say there's probably 80% hit rate where whatever pick I make is not better than T. Higgins.
Yeah, but you get into the very weird spot of Colts to where he sold a lot of his team. He paid me a lot to get his future first back. He does all this stuff. All right, and the draft, he goes out and gets Bryce Young instead of forcing one of the QB picks there of Penix or Bo Nix. That's perfectly fine. If you wanted to really come out with your QB or potential QB of the future. Your other pick, you take Brian Thomas. Okay, he traded up additional assets to get into those premium spots. But now he's got not a lot to show, and he doesn't have a lot of draft picks either. That team's not competitive right now.
No, and it's not going to be for a little bit. He's probably going to have to keep breaking things down and going from there.
But a 25-year-old T. Higgins.
I'm not treating 26 picks as anything other than playoff first right now. I can't. Beyond complete sickos like me who turn, and again, I say me, but teams have done it better, like the Pats or the Colts or the Steelers or the Bills or others who have turned shit rosters into playoff teams. How can you talk about a team a year and a half away and say, oh, that's definitely going to be a shitty pick. I got to, treat it as if it's a non-playoff first. I can't do it. Anybody in this league can trade nothing to something in a year and a half.
It's just one of those things too, though, where you go, look, it's if you don't have any guaranteed pieces, I don't know, to get a. I'm just really not a fan of people that have that many question marks on a roster trading away a future pick. I really like Bryce Young. I really hope Bryce Young plays better this year. But, the reality of it is all he has to do is go out and get injured. They get the first overall pick again. And he's probably done in Carolina. That's just the reality of how the game is these days. And if that happens, all of a sudden, well, you need to shed all these other points because you might not even have a quarterback on your roster. And if you don't shed the points, what are you going to do about quarterback? And then you don't even have your 26th pick. And it's very easy for a team like that to get into such a big, deep hole. And if you've already traded away your future, you're looking at 3 years before you can even start a rebuild. It's just not a place I would ever want to put myself in.
It's a really uplifting episode here. We're touching on the high notes here. We're having a conversation.
Do we want to go back to how dismal the running back position is? That Rico Dowdle might be a relevant player in our league.
And like I said, this is the exact point I'm making about the running back conversation. And trying to simulate what actually happens in the NFL. Like, in what simulation would the Dallas Cowboys go through last year and say, okay, cool, we're going to let Tony Pollard walk. We're going to bring back Zeke Elliott, but, not pay him a lot of money. We're not going to draft anybody. We're not going to sign anybody else. And we're going to roll in that way to 2024. Let's go.
Well, Dallas has already shown it, though. Like, when we had DeMarco, and we finally actually started running the ball. When DeMarco left us to go to Philly to be with his buddy Sam Bradford again, we had Darren McFadden at the end of his career go for 1,100, 1,200 yards. Like, if you have a good enough offensive line, you can just plug and play at running back. Like, is it nice to have, like, the Eagles last year, was it nice to have, what's his name? Swift. Was it nice to have Swift over a lesser running back? Yeah. Especially with how good their line is, you just get even additional, profit off of it. But
yes, but again, and don't get me wrong with this. This is still the same front office that drafted Zeke as early as they did, right?
So it is and it isn't. Will McClay has a far bigger voice now in that personnel department than he did back in, what was that, 14? No, 16?
Okay, I mean, look, I'm not a Cowboys fan, but you said Will McClay. I have no idea who the fuck that is.
So Will McClay is the Dallas Cowboys' actual general manager.
Okay.
You can tell yourself it's Jerry. You can tell yourself it's whoever you want it to be. Will McClay is the actual. He's the guy who's in the office day in, day out, in charge of everything. He has the highest say in the building.
See, and this is where, again, this is why you listen to these episodes, because this is good content. This is good information for those of us who have no idea what the fuck to do with the Cowboys should know.
Yeah, no, essentially every year you'll see that a interview request was declined by the Cowboys and he just gets a raise. Like, no, he literally had 2 requests this year to interview for GM, and he didn't take either of them. And
Gotcha.
he got just another raise. It literally happens like every couple of years. He just gets a raise, and they decline to allow him to interview with anyone to keep him in Dallas.
No,
Because he is the shot caller.
that was also a very New England thing for some of their guys.
Yeah, that's one of our VP of player personnel in San Francisco. That's exactly the situation. Is he's never allowed to interview anywhere else. He just gets raises whenever he wants, and he makes the cap work.
Yep.
It's good to have those guys.
Yeah, no, they're just some people in some of these buildings that are just really, really valuable.
Mm-hmm. The ones that you see, like, just finally break through to be a GM. Those are the franchises that kind of seem to do well out of nowhere.
Yeah, it's also great for him, honestly, because in Dallas, all the lesser knowing fans just cuss at Jerry. When reality, he's the one doing everything on the back end. He's definitely had his hands tied at points, like where Jerry goes, we have to keep Schultz, and we tag Schultz, and then we trade Amari for a 5th. And it's, painful days.
Again, it's comforting to know that there is someone behind the scenes that you have some confidence in that's going to be a stabilizing hand. Taking a look at the trades that have gone down since.
Yeah, I was going to say, if Bill was in here, he'd be like, can we talk about my new QBs?
Aaron Rod, I mean, you acquired Michael Penix and then traded Michael Penix. I'll tell you what, I can't blame you for going after Will Levis. I think that's a great player to start with. And again, I will say this, saying that I fell for the Kenny Pickett trap last year, but well, that was could be a very, very nice piece to have.
Yeah, for me, it was just, when you have Rodgers the chance to get younger and getting a player of Penix, it's not often you get the 8th overall drafted QB and a deal like that. It allows you to get that much younger at the position. And then as soon as I start shopping around trying to find someone who would actually play this year, or more likely to play, I should say.
Yeah, we're living there. Like, let me take Penix and we take his draft capital and turn him into Levis and Moss. And we talked about that beforehand. Like, Moss is, if you think about players I love, it's two archetypes. It's either the later round draft picks that I waited on and hit, or it's the guys who are the least loved at their position, least loved at that capital, but produce. And that's the thing. Like, Zach Moss is going to score 175 points this year. He is. Like, who is willing to bet against Zach Moss scoring 175 points this year? Because I will absolutely take that bet. And as a result, like, he should be valued a certain way, but he's not going to be. Nobody's going to pay that for him. But that's his value. Like, I love those players, and that's exactly what Zach Moss is.
Yeah, he's probably one of the best values at running back, and like especially one that's an assumed starter that will get rushing attempts, will get passing attempts, will get an opportunity to do just about everything on the field. Yeah.
But again, that's also probably, Tyler Lockett might be the receiver equivalent of that. Who knows? I'm trying to see what else kind of pops out from the trades that have happened.
RJ and I made a trade.
That's right. Trey Palmer and a second for Sam Williams and a third. So someone's got to help me here because I don't get the fascination with Sam Williams, and I need someone to help me with there.
Super productive on small amount of small amount of snaps, and he is in a place where they acknowledge his ability and value, and they are going to make an effort to have him on the field. So he's just cheap cheap contract that is controlled. He's young, and he has upside. Sure, he's a 4-sack, not even 20 tackles a year guy, but it's also on 100 snaps.
I promise you, he's had more sacks than 4. It's just he gets them waived off for penalties for hitting a little too hard.
Yeah. He's one of those guys that, when everything starts to go right for him, his numbers are going to balloon.
Yeah. Well, we lost Dorrance Armstrong, who was our other big pass rusher guy that was taking his snaps. And now that Dorrance is gone, I expect Sam to come in and be that next guy in rotation, which means he'll get a lot more snaps this year.
Yep, I agree with that. That is why I paid that.
No, again, that's why I wanted to throw it out there because I just didn't understand the calculus on that. And it wasn't because it wasn't there. It's because sometimes I just don't know.
Weirdly enough, this is my second attempt of buying that type of defensive end. The first one got moved to defensive tackle. I wanted a guy that was very efficient on small amount of snaps and Franklin Myers was the third guy in his rotation, and he was very efficient. Just unfortunately, he is now a defensive tackle in Denver.
Yep. You literally bought him like 2 days later. He got traded, and then a couple weeks ago, I think it came the position change. So
yeah, I know Goose joked about him, Sam Williams being a defensive tackle. I don't know if a guy that is 6'4", 260 is necessarily a defensive tackle type. So hopefully I dodged that.
nah, if
I feel like
anything,
you're
we'll
way
move
too
Nealon inside.
You can't be a defensive tackle.
What'd you say, Mike?
I feel like if your weight doesn't start with a 3 these days, you can't be a defensive tackle.
I agree.
I don't know. There's been a lot of successful, like 285, 290 guys, like Geno Atkins and Aaron Donald, but there definitely aren't many of them. That's kind of the muscle hamsters, the large muscle hamsters, play in that range.
Muscle hamsters when you weigh 290 pounds. Oh,
Yeah, well, it's like Doug Martin, like back in the day. Just these dudes that are just like Doug Martin played at like 228, but he was wound so tight, like he was just so built and like I guess thick, you would say, to where it's just like how are they? Like Aaron Donald's one of those guys to where it's like you see him and he looks like he's freakishly strong, but you don't think he weighs 290. But then the dude steps on a scale and he's 290, and you're just like, whoa.
holy shit, yeah. What do we do with this?
Ridiculous.
Do we want to talk about the trade right above the Sam Williams, Trey Palmer trade?
Yeah, sure. The Tajay Spears for the 26th first from Panthers, the 26th second from Philly, and the Panthers 26th fourth.
So this is like the first of a couple that have happened in the past few days of like properly priced big offensive pieces being moved. I like this for Bengals, but I also like this for Rams. I think that's a good value with what JSN is right now.
I was really.
I just read Panthers in my trade, so do you want to introduce the Bengals Rams trade?
What happened?
Oh my god, this is fantastic. This is why we enjoy this podcast, because we get so wound out of our minds that we just enjoy ourselves. Okay, so RJ, we're gonna try this again, and I'll actually introduce the trade you started talking about. So the Bengals and Rams trade, Draymond Jones, the Bengals 1, 2, and 4 for JSN. Again, this is not a trade you could make last year, but because he's been blocked, JSN's been just kind of a great piece to go at. Okay, RJ, he's all yours.
I said my piece. I think that's fine for what JSN is right now. Definitely possible that somebody gets moved off of that team and he becomes a better wide receiver, but a first and a second for somebody with upside is good.
I was really disappointed with this trade because I sent Rams, first and a second, and I had messaged him on Discord and asked him, hey, I'm willing to add players or whatnot to that. What would it take to get that kind of deal done? And he never said anything to me at all and just made this trade, which makes me sad because I definitely have better defensive tackles than Draymond Jones, and I still had a 4th rounder at the time. So, guys, if you're shopping someone and there's someone else in your inbox and the difference is Draymond Jones and a 4th versus just a first and a second, you might want to check your Discord or counter or anything other than just settling.
and this is what we kind of say is throw it out there and have the conversation. Like, I understand a couple of us, myself included, are challenging because of how much we try and make deals and how many deals we make in a tightly bound basis, or how often we flip our teams. I get it. That's not for everybody, but take advantage of that market, take advantage of that situation, and shop a little bit before you buy. That said, you get what you want, take it, but go in eyes open. I don't know. Could I have been more generic in that description? What do you guys think?
No, I definitely agree, because that's just what it feels like. It feels like he didn't look. He just saw. Was like, it's good enough, and just took it. Because I don't know to you guys, but Draymond Jones doesn't have that much value, and a fourth doesn't have that much value. If there was someone else offering me the same kind of draft capital, I'm probably shopping around a little bit before I just click accept. But it is what it is.
I'd be interested in, Draymond Jones, but to your point, more in kind of my team is in complete rebuild and I'm a bit of a market this year rather than actually being anything in particular. But yeah, you'd be interested in that point. But yeah, the big parts of that are the picks, and
Well, even when it comes down to that, it's, I asked if I could add players. If he really wanted a D tackle for the future, I totally don't have Braden Fisk or Kalijah Cansey, that are both younger and more promising than a Draymond Jones.
Well, and this is where I think things start to get interesting this offseason is like JSN, for example. He was on my team earlier this offseason, and I think I moved him for what I felt was kind of a 108 to 110-ish draft pick move. Here he's moved for a defensive player we don't think super highly of, but we both like, a 26 first, a 26 second, and a 26 fourth. So call that kind of maybe in that range or something like that. Like, I don't think this is the last time that JSN gets moved this offseason. And, what needs to happen for him to move up, down, or otherwise?
That's interesting.
I mean, it's Chris. Like, he's kind of that in between of owners we have. Like, we've got the crazy ones like those of us who are on the spot who make trades way too often. But we also have the people who make like 2 trades a year. And Chris is in that kind of happy in between. Like, hey, you know what? It's been that kind of week. Let's do what we need to do with the team and shake things up, and does not shy away from that.
Yeah. Well, with that trade, though, I think he's in a great spot just to sit.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good fit with the team, too, because he's trying to get a little bit younger, but at the same time, if anything happens with Seattle, like, he benefits.
Yeah. Well, whenever you're paying a guy like Burrow 42, and you're able to add Garrett Wilson, JSN, Trey McBride, all these guys he's got that are all on rookie deals, he's got a 2-3 year windows with some guys that are considered to be pretty elite. And he has enough time to give them that year or two to grow because he isn't pushed cap-wise. So he's in a very good spot.
Yeah, again, to your point, he's got a lot of guys who are supposed to do that. I think this is probably the worst team in the AFC North.
The Bengals?
Yeah.
Ooh.
I would easily say the Ravens.
Nope.
Let's see, Burrow, Bijan. I guess.
The
Deion.
entire Chicago RB room.
I mean, I don't. They're all really good teams, but I don't hate the idea of Bengals being the.
Well, to me, Baltimore doesn't have a very good edge room and doesn't have a very good safety room. And on top of that, when it comes to the premium players, yes, he has Tyreek and yes, he has DJ, but he doesn't have the RB depth. He's got one starting RB versus the entire Chicago backfield plus Bijan.
Yes.
And Tua has been healthy 1 year of his career. One.
How many running backs do we have to start in a week?
One.
You only have to start one.
How many receivers do we have to start in a week?
Two. But you also come down to, Bengals also has a better RB or has a better wide receiver 3.
Who's Bengals wide receiver 3?
You could say it's Hollywood.
Oh, JSN or Hollywood.
Yeah. Versus either Wicks or Cooks. Or if you just happen to get touchdown week to Marcus Robinson.
I'll take Wicks. And that.
Yeah, I think that's going to be my hot take of the day. Is Bengals are currently the worst team in the AFC North.
Someone's trying to start a fight.
That's interesting. No.
Well, I mean, Chris, if Chris would like to debate me on this, he's more than welcome to join a podcast here or there or some other time. It's not like, we've never been shy about it in the past, but here we are.
Well, he has notes on his rankings.
Yeah, he does. I don't know. I think if I had to choose something in the North, my hot take will be the Steelers make it in the playoffs and the Ravens are out.
I do like Steelers' team.
Well, the other big part that helps Steelers is he has the 4th place. So he will play 3 teams that are also 4th place for their division this year. And all of those should be easy wins for him. So I believe that Ravens team finished 3rd last year. There's a decent chunk of 3rd place teams that are improved and are going to be better. A lot of these 4th place teams are still pretty bad. So I just see them being...
The Steelers play my division this year?
No. I play you.
Dodged a bullet there.
Yeah.
So this is kind of one of the themes of my off season for me. So pardon me while I get on my soapbox for a moment, but I'll give it back to everybody in a minute here. Is one of the things I'm trying to do this off season is take the narratives, take the hypotheses, take the approaches people are using, and kind of take a step back and say, who else could this be applicable to? So, for example, I traded Tyjae Spears earlier today. One of the things I really liked about him was because he had a certain profile in a offensive first head coach who was going to run the offense a certain way, and he was finally going to get the opportunity to step in that lead role. Got it. Who else could I apply that methodology, that approach, that profile to? Who else would that fit to kind of maybe go target because it's, not somebody else is thinking about right now? And this is one of those examples where I think he may have been overlooked.
Who was overlooked?
Like I said, I might have galaxy brand this a little bit, but yeah, I galaxy branded.
Yeah, but the Baltimore to me has a massive edge issue because I see one guy that you can really rely on in his entire edge room.
Is that Highsmith?
Yeah,
I agree.
because Cam Jordan is excellent, but his ankle issue last year lingered the entire year, and he's about to be 35, I think. Joe Tyron Shayunka, I hate to tell you this, but I have the guy who's going to replace him by week 5. I see he's been the biggest draft bust by Jason Light in the last 4 or 5 years. He's not played well at all.
You think Braswell really replaces him?
By week 5, yeah.
Yeah.
That's gonna be the fun part of the offseason is where does this all fall out? Because we're pretty strong in our takes.
Yeah, I kind of assumed that was going to be Randy Gregory's job.
Well, Randy might get. I wouldn't be surprised if Randy, honestly, is the starter. But I truly believe Braswell is going to get a very good look in preseason, and I think he's going to be really productive. And I do not think it's going to take long for him to take over the role over what Tyron has by week 5. So I wouldn't be surprised if he was the edge 3 getting 45, 48% of snaps.
The real winner in all this is Jeremy because he has Yaya, who is the unquestioned starting defensive end in Tampa Bay.
Yep.
Although when I did input GOAT into the current player bot, Jonathan Grenard popped up. So apparently Jeremy does have the greatest of all time as his defensive end.
I mean, he was a stud last year.
I still think he has the best edge room in the league.
It is pretty impressive.
Yeah, I know a lot of people want to give it to the Commanders, but just for the price and everything, I just love his edge room significantly more.
I mean, so I like Dana. I like Yaya. I don't really I like Kingsley could probably just be one of those guys that gets replaced in a year or two by somebody with higher draft capital. Grenard's superstar. Tyquan Lewis. Is he still with Indy? Does he have a job?
He does, but his role is definitely diminishing.
Okay. I mean, if Khalil Mack stays the menace that he was last year, sure.
It's a nice thing to have. But I mean, that's the time of year we're in, I guess, is hopium is abound. Everyone has a path, and whatever value you have on your player is terrible and wrong. So now we get into the full open market that is the off season, and enjoy.
Yep. And we only have one last big trade, and thank you, Jets. After about 2 years of us telling you to get a running back, you have a running back.
Holy shit, yes. Let me put this back up. Trades. Fournette, Will Disley, the 25 first and second of the Jets, and the 26 first and second of the Jets to the Saints for Jonathan Taylor and George Kittle.
That's a pretty sick tight end group. Freiermuth, Kittle, and Conklin.
Yes, it is.
Like, holy shit. Like, look at what that does to that team. He's a contender now. He has to be. Stroud, Taylor, the depth he has at receiver, Kittle at tight end, a very strong edge room. Like he's rounding the edges off. He has to be the favorite in the East.
Is it hard to be the favorite in the AFC East?
That's not a high bar to clear.
Not at all.
Okay.
But yes, he is the favorite.
Let me rephrase again. He's on par with the AFC North.
Huh?
No.
Not with that wide receiver room.
Strong disagree.
Yeah, I'm not sold entirely on that receiving room because Jalen Hyatt doesn't have a quarterback. Corey Davis is without a job. Kadarius Toney still can't catch anything.
Okay, will you stop tiptoeing around the points that are the main points to make?
I think
Odell Beckham is in Miami. Tank Dell is the player everyone wants to add right now. Deontay Johnson's the receiver one for Young. Jamison Williams is in a position to make a very, very strong leap next year with some of the pieces that moved out of the way. Like, let's talk about the actual points about this instead of highlighting the, well, you know, Corey Davis doesn't have a job right now. Nobody gives a shit about Corey Davis.
he's
All right, Tank Dell is a tissue. You blow on him and he's dead.
I don't
You
know.
brought up Corey fucking Davis. I don't want to hear about, well, tissues and shit like that.
My
got-
I
wide
don't know.
receiver 3 is his wide receiver 1. So I don't really.
It's a very interesting group. Deontay is his clear one. Jameson has never produced.
This is clear one. Tank Dell's is clear one. What are you
Yeah.
talking about?
No, I think Dell's not the one in Houston. He can't be the one in the Jets.
Get
Tank
shot
can't
a few
stay
times,
healthy.
you're no longer a wide receiver 1. It's crazy.
You can't be less than 170 pounds and be relied on in football, period. You can't be that light. It's a no-no.
I'm offended by everything you guys are saying.
What the what are you?
Tank Dell is not bad. He's just not a wide receiver one.
I just don't think injury-wise you can rely on him for a year. Like, I really don't believe he's going to have multiple years of being fully healthy. That dude's always going to miss games. Like, can you honestly tell me a name of a receiver that didn't weigh 170 pounds that stayed healthy for consecutive seasons?
I'm sure. I have no idea.
There's somebody there. So, I don't know. Somebody's in there.
Yeah, well, who?
I'm sure there have been. I'm
Yeah.
just not going to make that
No,
to find
it's
it.
That's like Darren Sproles is the comparison point.
no. I mean, it's a different conversation. It's no one has done it before. James is right, but this is a different league than we've had in past years. Level of contact you can make at line of scrimmage, level of contact you make downfield, what constitutes pass interference. All these things are incentivizing a situation where you're getting smaller, quicker, more nimble receivers than you've had in past years. So the archetype is changing, and as a result, what we're seeing on the field is changing. So
Yeah, but he doesn't have the depth to absorb it, though. Like, that's the other part. Like, if Tank was his fourth, fifth receiver, we'd love it. But in reality,
Great.
we're considering Tank as
show me
number
the
one.
6'3", 220 Julio Jones in this draft.
Brian Thomas.
Excellent. Yes.
It's the closest thing we got, to be
Feel
real.
about everybody else.
So it's a fine room. It's nothing special. It's nothing flashy. It reminds me very much of like a Chiefs roster situation. Like, it's nothing special, nothing flashy, very middle of the road, but it gets the job done. As far as the receivers go, like we were talking specifically about the receivers. Nothing special, nothing flashy, but we'll get the job done.
Yeah, I can
And if
agree.
you can go beyond that too, he's also really thin at linebacker, and he only has a third-round pick left to use.
Oh, you can find a linebacker for a third.
Yeah, I only
I,
have three.
it's a very glass cannon team. Like he has Jonathan Taylor at running back. That's it. His receivers is a guy that seems like he's going to be injury prone, and two other guys that one's in a new place and another one hasn't fully proven at the NFL level. His linebacker room consists of two starters. Like if he gets injured anywhere, it's still the East and he'll win it. But to call him a contender, being that thin, is a bit of a reach.
Well, at the minimum, he has purchased the building blocks to go into the future with. Worst case is he does what Titans did a couple years ago. He just accepts his fate as a playoff team that will never win, and he sells off the old pieces, like Kittle and whoever else he feels needs to go. He's in a solid spot to continue for a while if he chooses to.
Well, I guess all we can say is it's him. All right. You're the problem. It's you.